Hello and welcome to this week's episode, all about our master series. And today we're talking about what really is the customer experience. What is the customer experience? What is the difference between customer experience and customer service? And also going through, the four things that you really need, the four elements you need to create a better customer experience in your business. And this is something, you hear a lot about customer experience. Especially right now. The two things, since COVID, since, the past 2 years, the things that people really care about is they care more about the experience that they're getting versus just the stuff that they're buying. So there are four elements that really go into creating a really good experience. And this experience, as I always talk to my own clients, the experience, it's not just when people are coming into your brick and mortar business. It's what that experience is when you're talking to them on the phone, what that experience is when you're working with them via Zoom, via virtually. What does that experience look like? What does it look like when they land on your website? And I always like to think of it that when you are creating an experience that is virtual, whether they're landing on your website or they're working with you virtual, you want them to get the same feel as if they were there with you live, as best as you possibly can. Because when you create the experience as if they were there with you live, you have higher levels of connection and higher levels of interaction, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So really, let's talk about what the difference is between customer service and customer experience, okay? So an experience, if we just look at that word, it's something that happens to us to shift the way that we look at things, to shift our perspective on things, to shift how we feel about something, so that we can make a decision on what we want to do, so that we can, experience something differently. Okay. So when we look at customer service is how we connect with people, how we talk to them, how we serve them. When we talk about customer experience, that is more immersive. It is more immersive. It has a higher level of interaction and connection. Whereas when I talk to people about customer service versus customer experience, customer service is like that one level. Okay. It's that how you are serving them with a specific issue that they have. When we talk about customer experience, it's literally the environment, the actions, the interaction that you create whether or not someone has a problem, whether or not it's just how they interact with you. Okay. So that's kind of how I look at and how I teach the difference between customer service and customer experience. You really need to have both in a business because the experience is something that you're creating to take into account. It takes into account all of your five senses. Okay. Your sight, smell, touch, hearing. Okay. How that all fits together. All right. That's the experience. Where with the customer service, it's how you are interacting with them, how you're treating them, how you're showing up to them. Okay. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Now, when we talk about customer experience, and customer experience right now, as I said, is super, super, super important because it determines if you have a really, really good experience in your business, it will determine whether or not someone goes to eat at your restaurant versus the one down the street, shop in your store versus the one down the street, go to your yoga classes versus the one down the street. Okay. So creating that experience really is important because it's how people end up seeing you. Okay. How people experience your business, your team, your brand. And this is why we talked about this a couple weeks ago, where your customer experience doesn't start with your customer, it starts with your team. Because again, if we think about what that customer experience is, it's how people see your business. It's how people interact with your business, live or virtual. So if you have a team that isn't really happy and doesn't really like what they do, that is going to then push out to your customers on the external piece, and there's going to be a disconnect. So we talked about how your customer experience actually starts with your team. And how it starts with your team is taking care of your team, making sure that they understand their purpose and the bigger purpose of the business. They understand the vision. They understand who your customer is and how you serve that customer, how you deal with that customer, how you talk to that customer, how you interact with that customer. They need to understand what that looks like, and at the same time, the importance of understanding that. And then how that then goes into creating this amazing customer experience. And the other thing I always tell my clients, the people that I work with, is just because an experience is a certain way in your industry, just because, if you own a restaurant and your whole industry creates an experience one way, doesn't mean that you necessarily need to create it the same way. Okay. You want to make sure that you're creating the experience based on you and what you stand for, what your vision is, what your purpose is, what your mission is, what your brand is, coupled with what your customer really wants, who your customer is, what are they passionate about, what are they looking for, what do they need, what are they frustrated with in your industry that you do differently and you do better. And that's going to be different business to business, because you're the only one that's you. You're the only one that has your vision for your business. Nobody else does. So that experience that you're creating, when you take those two things into account, what your business stands for, what your vision is, and what your customer is really looking for. So you need to really understand who your customer is. And as I said, all of that needs to be communicated to your team so that your experience starts from the inside and works its way out, not vice versa. So when we talk about customer experience, there's actually 3 of them that we want to create. A lot of people just focus on one. The one that they always focus on is, what does it look like when someone is physically in your store buying something, or in your restaurant dining, or when they're landing on your website and they're buying something. That's what people focus on. There's actually 3 experiences that we want to create. One is the Captivate experience, which is before they even know who you are. All right, what does that look like? Where are they finding you? Where are they learning about you? The second one is the Educate, and that's the big one. That's the one that everybody focuses on. The Educate experience is the one where they're actually interacting with you. They know who you are. They're buying from you. They're dining with you. They're on your site. They're shopping with you. What is that like? That's the one that people focus on the most. And then the last one is the Elevate. And the Elevate experience is one that is the most important, and the one that is most overlooked. And that is when people actually become a customer of yours. Now, tricky. I like to say this is your people that work for you. Your team has this Elevate experience, and your actual customers have this Elevate experience. Tricky. So the Elevate experience is, how do you make them customers for life? How do you keep them coming back? How do you continue to nurture and build that relationship? How do you elevate it? It's the same thing with your team. How do you continuously educate them and, elevate their skills and what they're doing and how they're interacting with people? How do you continue to do that? I know, tricky. But let's go back to the customers. How do we make them customers for life? As I said, most people focus on the second experience. Most people focus on when someone is buying from you, when someone is interacting, when they became a customer. Like, what does that look like? That's the one that people focus on the most. Second one is, how do you attract them to you? That's the one that they focus on second. Okay. The one that people miss many times over is the elevate. How do you continuously take care of, show up for, serve the customers that you have, that in turn will then be like you're working on building that relationship and developing that relationship and nurturing that relationship. So there's 3 customer experiences. Okay. So when we focus on that, we also want to take a look at, all right, we have these 3 experiences that we want to create. And we want to look at what are the elements that actually go into creating this experience. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you the 4 elements, and I like to call this the wow factor. But these 4 elements that go into creating any one of those experiences, any of the one of those 3. Okay. And this applies to the experience that you're building for your employees, but also the experience that you're building for your vendors, for your customers. Okay. Anybody who has some touch in your business. All right. So there's 4 elements. Now, again, because people, when we go through this, people are like, oh my God, do I need to have all 4? I don't know how I'm going to have all 4. No, you don't. But you want to have 1, maybe 2, maybe 3. When you have 4, that is how you create like a really amazing experience. All right. But again, you don't need all 4. You might just have 1, you might have 2, especially, when you're working in the captivate phase, the captivate experience. Most of that stuff is going to be building your visibility, building your content in social media, whatever that looks like. Okay. So yeah, you're not going to have all 4 of these elements because it's kind of a little impossible. But if someone is coming into your brick and mortar business, they're shopping with you, they're dining with you, they're taking a class with you, you probably will have, or you're creating an event, probably will have all 4 of these elements. All right. So to start, the experience and these elements are based on the level of connection that you have with someone. Okay. And that can go from just observing what's happening. Okay. They're not like super connected with you. So when you're doing a live video like this, all right, the experience that I'm creating for you is one that you are an observer. Okay. You're watching, you're listening, you're observing. So it goes from observing, which is that lower, that, least amount of connection because you're just observing it, you're just watching it, you're just seeing, to fully immersed. So if we were sitting in a class live or even virtual, okay, and we had some interaction going on and I was making you do, certain tasks or whatever, or if you were shopping, if you were shopping on my online store, but you were shopping and we were having a virtual shopping experience, that is immersed. Okay. So it goes from your level of connection goes from observing to being fully immersed. All right. Low to high. Then we also have your level of interaction, if I can speak. And of course, you're going to have low to high again. All right. So interaction goes from you are passive, okay, where again, something like this, you are sitting, you're watching, but you're very into it, okay, but you're not really interacting. You don't have any interaction going on. So it's passive. All right. Then you have the active. So if you were, again, even if we were doing a virtual workshop or somebody was shopping in your store, all right, the experience that you're creating is more active because they're taking part in it. We're actually having a two-way, we're having full communication. We're able to communicate. We're able to interact with each other. Okay. So again, your experience that you're creating, any experience, is based on the level of connection and the level of interaction. All right. And it doesn't matter if you're doing the captivate, all right, you're attracting people to you, the educate, where they're actually working with you and they're in there, they're shopping, they're dining, they're taking a class, they're doing a workshop with you, they're doing some virtual or live class with you. All right. And then we have the elevate, where you are connecting with them and nurturing the relationship and building the relationship. These elements that we're talking about, the level of connection and level of interaction, will be found in each one of those experiences. All right. So, 4 elements of creating an experience. All right. And this is something that I teach all of my clients. We go through it in my business growth formula program. All right. It is one of the main pillars of scaling your business, which is creating an amazing customer experience. All right. That aligns with the culture that you're building. All right. But we start with culture because, again, we build from the inside out of your business. All right. So these 4 elements of creating an amazing experience. And like I said, I like to call it the wow factor. So number 1, it needs to be creative. You need to have some level of creativity built into your experience. Whether you are allowing your customer to be creative or you are providing some level of creativity for them. For example, one of my clients, we came up with this idea that, and this is going to go with another element we're going to talk about in a minute, but we came up with this idea of putting out iPads in a store with videos on that people can go in and interact with, watch a video about a specific topic, read an article about a specific topic, but even do some form of creativity, like creation, where they're actually doing some research on a specific topic that's related to his business. So having that creativity, that creative piece involved in there. Okay. Go to do a baking class and you're doing some hands-on where you are actually tasting different types of baked goods or tasting different types of chocolates or tasting, like if you go to a whiskey tasting or a wine tasting, you're actually tasting something. Okay. It's invoking one or several of your senses. All right. The second element is entertaining. You want it to entertain. You want them to feel good, right? That's the whole purpose. You want them to feel good. You want them to, feel good about themselves or laugh or, have some kind of entertaining. It could be storytelling. It could be telling the background of different artisans. It could be like if you were doing some kind of a class, telling your story. It could be, incorporating some kind of element of music. All right. So it's entertaining. All right. So that's element number 2. Element number 3 is educate. All right. What are you teaching them? And I don't mean standing in front of a group of people and literally teaching, but I mean, what are you teaching them? Okay. If you own a store, is it educating them on the different artisans? Is it educating them on, different knits or different areas of the world where stuff is made? Or is it educating them on selecting different types of wine? Or is it educating them on different poses, yoga poses? What does that look like? All right. So we have the educate element. And the last one is transform. You want that experience to have some form of a transformation. So again, when someone comes into your live brick and mortar shop, all right, if you own a retail store, you could have all 4 of these elements. So if you sell custom products, you're educating them on the person that made it. Okay. You are entertaining them by telling stories. You are giving an element of creativity by maybe they're able to touch and feel and see the difference of something. All right. But then you are also creating that transformation for them where they came in thinking, believing, feeling one way, and they're leaving thinking, feeling, believing a different way. And obviously, we want that to be a positive experience. So we want them to leave happier and fulfilled and, just feel really good about it. All right. If you're doing some form of a virtual experience, you might not have all of those elements. Although when you do a workshop with me or a class with me, you will have all of those elements because You will be doing some exercises. You will be, I do tell lots of stories because I have a plethora of them to pull from. There is an element of creativity because I like to do a lot of brainstorming, and I like to do a lot of thinking outside the box, because one of the elements when you work with me that you do is you carve your own path, and we totally disrupt whatever is happening in your industry and figure out how to do it your own way. So there are those 4 elements, but sometimes you might only have 2 elements. So let's say you're teaching a class. It might just be an educational thing, and it might be, it might be educational and creative, or maybe it's just creative, or maybe it's just, educational. It just depends on what it is that you are trying to create and the level of connection and interaction you want your your customer, to have. And again, all of this is not created based on what we think, all right? Because remember, your customer experience is a blend of your inside, like what is your vision? What are you trying to create? What is the difference you're trying to make? And how are you doing it with your team? And what is the customer really looking for? So before we create an experience, we really need to understand, who is your customer? Who is your customer? And what are they really looking for? Which is a whole other topic. But creating this customer experience, what it really, really comes down to, is, how can you show up differently? How can you connect and interact with people on a much deeper level, in a much more positive way, to make a difference in the life or lives of others? That's what this comes down to. And again, if we go back to what is an experience, it's something that we go through, something that happens to us that shifts our perspective, the way we see things, the way that we believe in things, the way that we, how we want to live our lives. That's an experience. And that's what we're trying to create in our businesses. It's not just about the products that we sell, or the food that we serve, or the classes that we teach, or how I consult with people. It's not about that. It's about the experience that I create that creates a transformation in someone else's life. And that's what you want to think about when you are creating these experiences in your business. So anyway, thank you for joining me today for today's master series session. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this was helpful. I would love if you would leave me a comment below and let me know, what was your big aha moment today, regarding the customer experience, and what are you going to start to do in your own business to make things better, to create that experience? Because again, it's not just about the products that you sell, or the food that you serve, or what it is that you do. It's more about who you serve and how you can serve them better, how you can create that transformation in their life. So until next week, have a great rest of your week. And again, leave me a comment below. Let me know what was most helpful in today's video. So until next week, stay healthy, stay happy, and I will see you soon. All right.